Welcome to Omelie's third tutorial on the Battleforge map editor. This time I will be teaching you how to add textures, which is very important. First of all, we go up to Windows and scroll down to the texture tool. This will bring up the texture window, which looks a bit like this one. Just wait for it to scroll over all this area. There we go. I typically like to start with a load layer set, which just makes it easier to do. We're going to go with the generator green land texture set. We'll open that. Just go recreate. Gotta wait a minute for it to load the 10 to 15 different textures that it has already set in there. This is a really easy way to start off your texturing because it loads basically what they use on the in-game maps, loads all the textures from them. Here we go, we have a bunch of different textures come up and it paints the base color of the map to the base color selected here, which is this green. The next thing we want to do is to add a new layer. Here's our new texture layer. We're going to move it to the very top layer. There's a hierarchy in the layers. Anything at the top will paint over anything below. So if you don't want anything painting over this layer, then you move it to the top. If you want things painting over it, move it to the bottom. With this layer, we're going to add a Frostland texture, because we're going to be putting this one under the water level for the ponds. You can add blending and all this other stuff. The effects of this is quite subtle for most of them, besides the blending. We'll just add a couple of different things. It doesn't really matter what we add here, but we'll just go with it. Okay. There's the blend factor and the texture alternative. This will set the main texture if you texturize, and the texture alternative will set the same texture, so it will allow you to have different opacity on the same texture without having to do a different layer. Okay, now that that's set, we'll move this window off to the side because we don't really need that at the moment. And we'll scroll in. I'm going to reduce the size of this because we don't really need it quite so big. We will need to change the size of our marker thing. As you can see, there it is. The fall off, you increase that, you increase the distance it can fade, I think. And we're just going to paint this under our water body on the top of this cliff, and you can see the effect that it brings out on the water, making it slightly cooler than it was before. And just paint over that, add a little around the edges. It doesn't really blend in quite so well. I'll show you the texture alternative. We'll move the opacity on this down a bit and go texture alternative, and it should come up a bit. Didn't work. It should come up a bit faded. Yeah, there we go. Around the edges it's a bit more faded now, which is a little bit nicer for blending. That's basically how you texture. Of course, you probably want to add a whole bunch of different textures in. Oops. You probably want to add a whole bunch of different textures in for example, let's just do a little area with this sand here. It's basically a dirt shade, and on top of that you could chuck a little bit of this other dirt and a little bit of this cracked one. And basically your job when you're texturing is just to blend it in nicely. The only way to do that is really be subtle about it. Don't use too much of one texture in one spot unless it's your base color, like this green. That's basically how you texture. It's pretty short and sweet. The hard part really is making it look good. Anyway, hope you enjoyed that. See you later.